inventory holding it year-round versus just seasonally. If it's a seasonal item, and you know there are some people really love it and they'll buy six packs of it, and everybody knows it's seasonal, it runs out. You don't have to worry about customers being upset that it's not available. It's like, hey, should have known better, you could have stocked up on it. You can come in every day to look for it. I mean, that just shows you a little decision like that makes a huge difference in the supply chain. How about your suppliers, where you source the coffee, where you source the flavoring, and so on. All of these are supply chain decisions, and very often we take them for granted all day. But what I'm going to do is, today I'm going to sort of start from basic, talk about what a supply chain is, how we manage it, what is involved with that, and then after that I will go into some of our classes that we offer in the supply chain management concentration, and then I'll finish up with some ideas in terms of jobs that you may be able to obtain. All right. Now, the term supply chain, just by seeing the name, implies that we're talking about a chain. However, it's really not the case if we think about it. Let's say this is your company, and your supply chain extends down to your suppliers. You don't just have one of them, so it can't really be a chain at that point, but those suppliers have suppliers again, and those suppliers may have suppliers again. But your customers should be part of your supply chain too. So you have several customers, and maybe those customers have customers again, and then there are consumers, and you end up with something like this, which, by the way, is still a very simple supply chain. And really, the way to think about a supply chain is that it is a network of companies. And it involves many companies and many organizations. And there are service providers that do warehousing and transportation for you. And there is information, and there's financial flows, and all of these things must be managed. Now, when supply chain management is a new discipline, marketing has been around for over 100 years. Finance has been around for over 100 years. In a way, supply chain is new because supply chains are getting more and more complex. And as they become more complex, the need to manage it becomes a lot more important. So, just step back into the 80s, where there was this new concept called integrated logistics. And integrated logistics really just said, you know what, logistics is important because you have to get our stuff to our customers, and there are decisions that we make in procurement, purchasing, supply management these days, decisions that we make in manufacturing and operations, and the decisions that we make in distribution or logistics and warehousing and transportation, and they affect each other. So if we just make these decisions in an isolated manner, we will make optimal decisions for our world, transportation, but somebody in purchasing can do something that really is not helpful. They can buy too much, and then we can't really transport it very well, or we're stuck with a lot of inventory because they are trying to get the best price. So that was in the 80s. Now, when I say the silos come together, what I mean is a functional silo. A functional silo is things like logistics, purchasing, finance, R&D, marketing, sales. Those are functions. And very often, a lot of companies, you have these large organizations, and you put all the finance people together, you put all the sales people together, you put all the logisticians, I don't know, in the back of the building somewhere, or better even in the warehouse here. They're out of sight, out of trouble. And really, what you end up with is, kind of, if you drive across the Midwest, you see these grain silos where they keep just grain or feed or whatever. And organizations become just silos. Nobody's talking to each other. And this analogy, I like it a lot because it really shows that you have sort of isolated units. And even 30 years ago, people recognized the need that, you know what, we need to have people talking to each other. Now, when I say supply chain, the trouble is that there are other words that sometimes you're like, these things kind of sound like something similar or different, but not really sure. And the problem is all these terms, somebody came up with them and said, you know what, this is really new, and let's say the demand chain, it's a network of companies, and it's really demand, but it's also involving suppliers and customers and so on. Very often people use different words and mean the same thing. Just because you put a new word around it doesn't mean that it's already a new concept. So just be a little careful with all these terms. Now, what has happened to supply chain management? It was sort of adopted by different types of people in companies. There are people in procurement, there are people in manufacturing, people in distribution who sort of took over the name and said, you know what, supply chain, we're part of the club. There's the Council of Logistics Management back probably 10 years ago, changed its name to the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals. The Institute for Supply Management, they threw the word supply chain around a lot. APEX, which is Production and Operations Management, they're doing supply chain stuff. So everybody says they're in supply chain management. Universities have changed the name of their programs to supply chain, where they've combined purchasing, operations, and logistics and made it supply chain. Now, at Rutgers Business School, we believe that it's not enough to just say, you know what, you have purchasing, operations, and logistics, and we call that supply chain. Our department is called Supply Chain Management and Marketing Sciences. And from all the supply chain departments that I'm familiar with, we're the broadest one. We have from lawyers, people, yes, we have purchasing people, we have logisticians, we have people who've done transportation, but we also have people who have different backgrounds. We have a lot of former senior executives who come and teach for us just because they really enjoy teaching. So we have a good mix of people. And we also have marketing, because without demand, it doesn't matter how good your supply chain is. If you can't sell your stuff, it doesn't really help you. So that's a little bit about what we are about. Now, everybody, I think, when you talk about a concept like supply chain management, you should be able to define it. So this is my definition. It's the integration of key business processes from end user to original suppliers that provides product, service, and information that add values for customers and other stakeholders. And really, there's sort of several key things that I want to highlight in there. Talking about business processes. Remember, I use the word silos and functions. Business processes are not that. They're something different. And I'll explain that in a second. And it goes end to end, from the end user to original suppliers. We're focusing on products, services, and information. And really, I should also say, yes, financial flows are important as well. We're just starting a new course in supply chain finance. We're offering it this fall as a one-credit course, which will hopefully become an elective later on. We're sort of phasing in classes that way. So just to show you what we really mean by supply chain management, it's the integration of these key business processes. There's 8 of them. Customer relationship management. How do you manage the relationships with your customers? It sounds very marketing-like, but if you think about it, half of your supply chain is customer side. You need to think about that. The mirror image of it, supplier relationship management. How do you manage relationships with your suppliers? Customer service. Now that you've managed these relationships in customer relationship management, and you set up sort of the rules of engagement with your customers, how do you keep your promises? That's customer service. Customer service is about keeping your promises to your customers. Demand management. Sounds a little bit like forecasting, but if you really want to manage demand, it's balancing supply and demand. So yes, you can shape demand and you can do something to fulfill that demand, and you may have constraints, so you want to lower your expectations in terms